Have you ever had sleep paralysis? Well, I have a few short stories for you. Before we get into it, this is Honey Horror. All of these tales are original, and I would love it if you take the time to like, subscribe, and share. Be sure to leave a comment with your personal spook rating, or just tell me what you think of the stories. Now let's get into it. This is around the time I was in high school. I would often go over to my friend's house after school, and we would partake in, mind-altering substances, all while watching TV. I would often fall asleep in the same recliner each time. Randomly, I would feel like I woke up and a sense of immense dread would creep over me. I would call out to my friend, Stacy, but she would just keep watching TV, like she couldn't hear what I was saying. As I cried out, I would see this dark figure coming up and over the back of the chair. I would try to get up and move, but it just wouldn't go away. Later I learned that Stacy had multiple unexplained visits from shadowy figures and was often plagued by nightmares. To this day, we believe that house is definitely haunted. I accidentally astral projected for as long as I could remember. I would mostly just float around my apartment when I did. One night, I was falling asleep, listening to classical music. As I drifted off, the music became louder and louder and slowly began to distort and sound like blaring white noise. This then shifted into a symphony of screams. As I laid there, I noticed I couldn't move, and I came to the realization that I must be experiencing sleep paralysis. Rather than the standard shadows or creeping feeling, I began to see the room from an aerial view. As I looked down, I saw one version of me, laying flat on my back on the bed, with my eyes closed. A second version of me was sitting in the upper corner of the bed, by the wall, rocking back and forth, holding the sides of her head. And the third version of me was pinned up against the corner of the ceiling, looking down on all of us. I woke up after. It felt like forever. I wondered what the hell all of it meant. Any interpretations of what I saw that night are welcome. I recently moved into my mom's boyfriend's house. My boyfriend and I basically lived in the basement. We had a bed that was pushed up against a wall, and I slept close to the wall each night. One night, as we drifted off to sleep, I began to hear a continuous tapping noise. I began looking around the room and wanted to get up to see what was happening, but my body wouldn't move. As I lay on my back, staring up at the ceiling, I start to see what looks like big black smoke cloud forming in the opposite corner of the room. I tried to call out to my boyfriend, but nothing would come out. Eventually, after laying there, watching the shadow grow and the tapping get louder, I sat straight up. I was panicking and woke my boyfriend up. We looked around and found a massive black bug stuck between the cracks in the bricks in the corner of the wall. It was moving back and forth, making a creepy tapping noise. I had been living in my house for some time, with little to no disturbing activity. One night, my partner, my dog, and I got ready for bed and snuggled up. Randomly, I wake up startled. At first, I look around in the darkness, trying to figure out what woke me up. I eventually sit up, and I look in the doorway to the bedroom. I see the perfect outline of my dog standing there. I call out to her, but she doesn't move. I look around and see that she's laying next to my side of the bed on the floor. To this day, I don't know what was standing in my doorway. I had just moved into a new apartment with my boyfriend. I was excited to be there, but wasn't accustomed to sleeping next to him just yet. Most nights, he would wake me up with random chatter in his sleep. Most of the time, I couldn't figure out what he was saying, but it was still kind of disturbing. One night, I fall asleep and wake up, but I can't move. I try to call out to my boyfriend, and surprisingly, he responds. But his response was a deep, low moan that would grow louder and louder. I tried to call out to him and ask what was wrong, but he just kept going. I kept trying to move my body and shake him awake, but my body felt like it was locked to the bed. Eventually I woke up, and to my surprise, My boyfriend was laying on his back with his eyes open just enough to see the white, and he was making some muffled screaming sound. My friend and I had decided to go camping for the first time. We packed up our gear and headed out to a public park. After searching for a spot in the forested area, we set up camp. We had a few drinks and toasted some marshmallows while laughing and chatting. Once we both settled down and started yawning, we decided to turn in for the night. As we zipped up our sleeping bags, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of wildlife noise. That's strange. I shook it off and laid down. I began to drift off, but after what felt like only a few seconds, I opened my eyes and listened intently. I heard a light scratching noise on the outside of the tent. As I attempt to turn and wake my friend up, I become aware that my body is stuck. I can't move. I try to open my mouth to call out to my friend, but no matter how hard I try, no sound comes out. All the while, the scratching sound grows louder and louder. To this day, I don't know if anything was on the outside of that tent, or if I was experiencing a combination of sleep paralysis and a nightmare. The feeling of dread still haunts me, as if whatever was stalking me wasn't of this world. Has this ever happened to you? I was so over experiencing sleep paralysis. It had happened on and off since I was about 12. I'm 22 now. Every night I would stay awake for as long as I could. I felt like if I made it past 3 a.m., the witching hour, I would be able to sleep peacefully. Unfortunately, I would almost always fall asleep before 3 a.m. One night, as I was laying on the couch watching TV, I began to drift off. I shook myself awake a few times and finally looked at the clock. It was 3:30 a.m. I had made it. I decided to head to bed and get some real rest. Not long after drifting off, I opened my eyes and attempted to reach for my phone to check the time, but I quickly realized my body wouldn't move. As I struggled, fear started to wash over me in waves. No, not again, I thought, and just as I suspected, a dark figure appeared in the corner of the room. I could barely see it from the angle I was laying, but I did my best to keep an eye on it as it creeped from the corner over to my bed. I kept telling myself this was just a dream and that it's time to wake up now. The figure just kept inching closer and closer. Soon, it was standing right over me, and rather than seeing its outline, the darkness of this figure completely enveloped me. I felt pressure on my chest and was so scared, my heart was pounding in my ears. There was no way for me to move or get away. All the while I was inside of my body screaming and thrashing, but on the outside, I laid still. As a sensation of pressure continued, I finally jumped and woke up. The sunlight was streaming through my windows, and I realized it was around 8 a.m. It felt like I had only been asleep in my bed for a few minutes. I don't know what this is, or why it happens to me so often, but if anyone knows how to make it stop, please tell me. That's all for Honey Horror. I hope you enjoy these stories, and if you did, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I hope you have a spooky day.